And it's this age-old argument again about automation.
And even if you do have one of those coveted advanced degrees and the most valuable skills on the market, there's something your employers have that you don't: the means of production. You might be a world-renowned surgeon, but unless you own a hospital, your employer still has leverage over you. You can be a brilliant engineer, but unless you own your own factory, you'll still be at the mercy of your employer. And as time and technology march on, this situation is only getting worse for people in all job fields. Automation has been constricting the supply of jobs for over a century, and cutting-edge innovations in artificial intelligence and robotics are making things exponentially worse.
Now, Henry Hazlitt in his book Economics in One Lesson covered this in a chapter on machinery. And of course, what ended up happening was the machinery came around and it ended up creating more jobs, not less. From the agrarian type economy that was dominated the economy, it simply transferred over into that of the industrial-based economy of the Industrial Revolution. I've covered all of that and you'll get the information on that. So his argument on automation is just a myth. It actually creates more jobs. It doesn't result in that of destruction of jobs.
Things are only going to continue to get worse for workers in nearly every industry as long as we rely on the capitalist job market. To put it simply, under capitalism, jobs are a commodity. Your labor is a commodity. Your labor is commodified. No matter what you do, if you're employed by a capitalist, you are simply a cog in the machine of a capitalist enterprise, and you can and will be swapped out and replaced by another worker or a machine or an outsourced firm in a developing country as soon as your employer finds out it would be more profitable to let you go. Do you ever wonder why they call it human resources? Because that's all you are.
It's not profitable for a business to just let workers go, especially if that, worker happens to be a very skilled worker and benefits that business in more ways than one and actually drives them in greater profits than that of without. So it's like saying that, oh, well, this individual pulls us in a lot of money because he's a very highly skilled worker and we can just afford to just let him go.
This commodification of labor has even deeper ramifications for the working class. Because we're all trying to sell our labor on the job market, we are in constant conflict and competition with our fellow workers. Because our employers have so much power over us, we do not own our own labor. We are confined and restricted and coerced within this hostile environment until we lose touch with our work and our fellow workers. We are left isolated and alone and fending for ourselves in the mercenary market of jobs. Karl Marx called this condition alienation, and alienation can take many forms. Under capitalism, workers are alienated from the products we create. We never have any real ownership over the products and services we generate under capitalism. We produce them for our employers, and they are consumed by other people. Our employers tell us what to produce and how to produce it, and they decide the price they will be sold for, and they take the vast majority of the profits once they're sold.
What he's basically ignoring is the very fact that that individual has the choice to, go out and buy those products. If someone was working for another company and there's hundreds and hundreds of other companies out there producing different products, well, what's that individual who's working for that company going to do in their free time? Well, they might go out shopping, and what do you think that the person's doing? They're going to exchange with their money for goods. I mean, what's he basically trying to argue here? Is he trying to argue for this of a moneyless based economy where, there's no prices? It's not a case of labour owns the produce, because then you're putting that of the consumer secondary, because then the consumer doesn't have that freedom to choose. They're going to have to, try and persuade you with whatever in order to get something that you personally own. That isn't how it works under socialism. It's communal ownership, and this is something that a lot of socialists just don't understand. Communal ownership has nothing to do with personal ownership of possessions or individual ownership in terms of private ownership.
Because of this, the objects we produce are alien objects. The worst part of being alienated from the products we create is that we do not reap the benefits of a job well done. If workers work harder and produce more products in shorter time, we're only enriching the capitalists who own the company. Thus, there's a complete disconnect between ourselves and the products we create for our employers under capitalism.
They actually do benefit from it. They get paid better wages over time, and they actually do move up the ladder in wages. There's people who, even in today's economy, never mind that of a free market, end up going from one position, starting out as a lower skilled worker, and then they move up into a higher position in the company. Even if a specific worker doesn't. They can easily go away and become better educated and have the freedom to do so and get better skills in order to, go and start up their own private business or, benefit that of another company. When new products come into the marketplace, it improves the material wealth as a whole for everyone.
This brings us to the second form of alienation from our labor. We don't have any direct control over how we create products. We're told what to do by employers, and we must comply with those instructions or risk losing our job. We don't have any say in how work is organized, and we do not own the means of production. We're just cogs in a machine owned by someone else. Because our work lives are so thoroughly controlled by our employers, we are truly alienated from our own labor. As Marx puts it, under capitalism, work therefore is not voluntary, but coerced, forced labor.
So he's calling it basically some form of force because of the fact that you chose to go and work for a company. As an employee, you're working for a company owner. It was your voluntary action to go and apply for that job, to go and work for that company, and it was the company owner that created the business. Therefore, he rightfully owns the company and the means of production, and rightfully, as a manager, is going to be the one directing what gets produced. He's going on about Karl Marx and this to do with socialism. His theoretical nonsense about socialism is worthless, because what socialism is in practice is essentially that.
A new report from a Seoul-based NGO has highlighted North Korea's abuse of its workers. The report by Open Radio for North Korea claims the regime has forced around 400,000 people into labor for almost no pay.
A new report claims North Korea's state-run labor organization is subjecting workers to slave labor, and that its victims number around 400,000 people.
In fact, it's worse. It goes back to the starving time of, the communal ownership of property, where a collective group in Jamestown, and they never got to keep the fruits of their own labour. Instead, it was all to be put into a communal pool, all to serve their masters of the Virginia colony. He's speaking from a theoretical perspective. He's not basing things on the real world. Of course, if you're going to go and work for a company, and a company owner owns the means of production, then yeah, he's going to be the one that manages how things are produced, etc. That's his right to do so. A capitalist can actually bring in skilled workers to get things done, and the skilled worker could actually know better to direct a company in a better direction than what the manager is capable of, and the manager would be more than happy to let them do so. And trust me, I know that there are specific businesses out there like that, and I won't cover that because that's private, but I know that there is examples of like that today, never mind that of a free market.
Now, because we must compete with one another on the job market and on the job itself, we are also alienated from our fellow workers. Sure, you might be cooperating with your coworkers in the context of performing work duties, but beneath the surface, you are in constant competition with each other. You're therefore kept divided from your fellow workers. You never want your coworkers to outcompete against you, because sooner or later you're probably going to run into a situation where it's you or them. One of you has to be let go. One of you is getting a promotion. One of you is going to have to step on the other to move up or to keep from getting pushed down. Even our managers suffer from this division and competition. Pressure is put on managers and executives to make things worse for workers, to make workers work longer and harder hours, to maximize productivity, and to minimize the amount workers are paid so that they can maximize the profits their employers are earning and secure their own positions within the company's hierarchy.
So we've already covered in the second part on the wage reduction and this whole maximizing productivity. If you want to hold on to your skilled labour, and that's something you would have to fiercely compete with, and especially in a fiercely competitive free market economy where opportunity is vast, capitalists really have to fiercely compete to, keep onto their skilled labour, so they do actually see wage increases. It's not a case of wage reduction.
Capitalism has created a dismal situation where the vast majority of humanity are severed from each other and forced to fight it out with each other so that capitalists can earn ever higher profits at our expense.
Yes, that exists in today's economy. In today's economy, you don't know whether there's another job there. That is not the case within a free market economy, because within a free market economy, sure, there is competition and people are competing for jobs, etc. But again, a free market economy, it's a low inflation inflationary based economy and you have fierce competition out there in the marketplace.
Humans sustain ourselves through conscious activity. What makes us human is our ability to consciously direct our labor in the world, whether we're growing food or building houses or composing music and creating art. Labor, therefore, is simply the process of creating objects from natural resources through conscious thought. Capitalism corrupts the very essence of our species so that we no longer create objects through our own thoughts. We no longer own our own labor. Our labor is directed and controlled and exploited by the capitalists who command us.
That's completely false of what he's basically arguing. He's saying that if employees go to work for a company, they have no creativity. Well, go and say that to graphic designers then. That's essentially it. Because I can tell you this, it's not the manager who's doing it's the creative work. And basically the manager has said very little. All the manager has basically said, here's what we want for our company. We want to, have something that's basically advertising this and this such and such a product. I don't have the skills to do it. That's why I hired you. I've just given you an example.
To summarize, capitalism is simply not voluntary. It's a system of control and domination, and it alienates us from the products we create, the labor we exert, the people we work with, and the very essence of what makes us human. Until we own the means of production for ourselves, we will be in constant conflict and strife with one another, fighting tooth and nail for dwindling jobs as they're automated away. If you're a worker, you're being alienated from nearly everything that matters in human life. You deserve to have democratic input on the job site, and you should be free to cooperate with your fellow workers just as our ancestors did, before the development of arbitrary and unjust hierarchies.
I have to laugh at that given the fact that before the Industrial Revolution what you had was people dying of starvation, etc. And it was actually because of private individual ownership of property that basically enabled people to work for the fruits of their own labour. And that was the reason why the United States, well, obviously at the time it was North America, but it became the richest country in the world basically because of the private individual ownership of property, because of capitalism. Had it not been for capitalism, that country would have never have become anything. And that's the truth of the matter. In fact, the Pilgrims, they resorted to cannibalism, fighting one another before the Europeans ever arrived. So anyway folk, you've heard my argument. Thank you for watching my video and listening, of course. If you liked the video, be sure to like it, and if you've got anything you would like to add or question or that, feel free to comment in the comment section below. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, of course it helps a lot, and thank you for watching again, and I shall talk to you later. Cheers.